Hare Krishna, devotees, welcome to day 54 of Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd Canto. We are now starting chapter 20. Chapter 20 is titled Conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. So let us begin with our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so Bhakti Vaibhava, we're in Canto 3, it's day 54, and we're in 3rd Canto, chapter 20, Conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. So there are 53 verses in this chapter. It is longer, definitely longer than average. There are longer, but it is definitely longer than average. It'll probably take us a good 3 days to get through. Anyway, let's see how it goes. We've divided these 53 verses into 8 sections. First section, verse 1 to verse 7. Shonaka asks Suta Goswami about Vidura. Remember that Srimad Bhagavatam is Suta Goswami explaining to Shonaka and the sages in Naimisharanya forest about the conversation between Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. So this is sort of the most foundational or fundamental level. There's all these different levels of discussions between different people, but Suta and Shonaka, Suta and the sages, that's about as foundational as you can get. So it's from verse 1 to verse 7. Shonaka asks Suta about Vidura. Second section is just verse 8. Suta prepares to answer. Just verse 8 on its own. Suta prepares to answer. Then next section 3 is from verse 9 to verse 11. It's also short. Questions by Vidura. Verse 9 to verse 11, questions by Vidura. And then section 4, verse 12 to verse 16, it's also a fairly short section. Maitreya begins answering. Verse 12 to verse 16, Maitreya begins answering. Right, and then the 5th section, verse 17 to verse 19, it's another short section. Brahma begins his part of the creation. Verse 17 to verse 19, Section 5, Brahma begins his part of the creation. There are two main parts of the creation. Creation by the Supreme Lord himself, and then following that, the creation of Lord Brahma. So this is about Brahma beginning his part of the creation. Then the sixth section, from verse 20 to verse 28, Brahma produces lower beings, more low class, more materialistic, even more demoniac, actually. Verse 20 to verse 28, Brahma produces lower beings. And then we go on to the seventh section, verse 29 to verse 37, Brahma's body takes the form of twilight. Verse 29 to verse 37, Brahma's body takes the form of twilight. And finally, the final section, section 8, from verse 38 to verse 53. So it's pretty long as sections go. It's quite long. Verse 38 to verse 53, and we call it Further Creations by Brahma. Verse 38 to verse 53, Further Creations by Brahma. All right, so let us begin. And we're in chapter 20, Conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. First section is verse 1 to verse 7, and we call this Shonaka asks Sutta about Vidura. Okay, so here we go. Verse 1. So we'll just, first of all, we'll read the verses. Verse 1. Sri Shonaka inquired, O Sutta Goswami, after the earth was again situated in its orbit, what did Swayambhuva Manu do to show the path of liberation to persons who were to take birth later on? Verse 2, Shonaka Rishi inquired about Vidura, who was a great devotee and friend of Lord Krishna, and who gave up the company of his elder brother because the latter, along with his sons, played tricks against the desires of the Lord. Right. Verse 3. Vidura was born from the body of Vedavyas and was not less than he. Thus he accepted the lotus feet of Krishna wholeheartedly and was attached to his devotees. Verse 4. Vidura was purified of all passion by wandering in sacred places, and at last he reached Haridwar, where he met the great sage who knew the science of spiritual life, and he inquired from him. Shonaka Rishi therefore asked, what more did Vidura inquire from Maitreya? Verse 5. Shonaka inquired about the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. There must have been many narrations of the spotless pastimes of the Lord. The hearing of such narrations is exactly like bathing in the water of the Ganges, for it can free one from all sinful reactions. Verse 6. O Sutta Goswami, all good fortune to you. Please narrate the activities of the Lord, which are all magnanimous and worth glorifying. What sort of devotee can be satiated by hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord? Verse 7. On being asked to speak by the great sages of Naimisharanya, the son of Romaharshana, Sutta Goswami, whose mind was absorbed in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, said, "Please hear what I shall now speak." That's the first section. Let's go through it in detail. It's verse 1 to verse 7, and we call it Shonaka Asks Sutta about Vidura. So again, verse 1, Sri Shonaka inquired, "O Sutta Goswami, after the earth was again situated in its orbit, what did Swayambhuva Manu do to show the path of liberation to persons who were to take birth later on?" All right, so yes, we have a purport here. So first point Prabhupada makes, which we mentioned previously also, is this: the appearance of Varaha was in the time of Swayambhuva Manu. But now, right now, in 2023, it's the time of Vaivasvata Manu. So Prabhupada explains something about the Manus again. Each Manu's period lasts 72 times the cycle of the four ages, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yugas. 72 cycles. One cycle is 4,320,000 solar years. So you just multiply by 72, and that's the period of one Manu's rule, and it's more or less the period of one Manu's life. That's the general understanding. And then there are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma. And these Manus, what do these Manus do? Prabhupada explains that the Manus make scriptural regulations for the salvation of the conditioned souls. Yeah, well, okay, for the salvation. Yeah. Everyone comes here, of course, not everyone, but the vast majority, to try to enjoy life, sense gratification, eat, sleep, eat, drink, and be merry, and all that. So Manu, his particular contribution is called Manu Samhita. Like Krishna is famous for Bhagavad Gita, Manu is famous for Manu Samhita. And it's all, essentially, it's do's and do nots for people living in the material world, the conditioned souls, with a view to them making the conditioned souls making spiritual advancement and getting out of material life. So Prabhupada makes he puts it very nicely, an important point. The Lord is so kind that any soul who wants to enjoy here in this material world is given full facility, but at the same time he's shown the path of salvation. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Shonaka Rishi therefore inquired from Sutta Goswami, what did Swayambhuva Manu do after the reinstatement of the earth in its orbital situation? Because as we read, Lord Varaha dived into the Garbhodak ocean at the bottom of the universe, located the earth planet which was in the water inside, lifted it out, and placed it on the surface of the water, and gave it some empowerment not to sink. Right. Okay, so let's go on to verse 2. Shonaka Rishi inquired about Vidura, who was a great devotee and friend of Lord Krishna, and who gave up the company of his elder brother because the latter, the elder brother, along with his sons, headed by Duryodhana, played tricks against the desires of the Lord. Yes, so this is referring, Prabhupada makes the point, this is referring to when Vidura left the palace on pilgrimage, if you remember that Vidura had given Dhritarashtra, his brother, some very good advice that don't fight with the Pandavas. Don't fight with the Pandavas. Don't try to interfere with Lord Krishna like this. A good advice. If Dhritarashtra had followed it and got his sons to follow it, then the whole battle of Kurukshetra with the killing of so many millions, including all Dhritarashtra's sons, it would never have happened. So, right. So, but the thing is, when he gave Dhritarashtra that good advice, Duryodhana objected strongly, and he wanted to kill Vidura. So he told him, just get out with only your life air, with only your breath. It means you can't take anything with you. Just go as you are on the spot. So, so Vidura was very dissatisfied with all of this. And so he left the palace and went on pilgrimage. And that's what's being mentioned here. So as a devotee, Prabhupada makes the point that as a devotee, Vidura showed by example that any place where Krishna is not honored is not a place which is fit for human beings, certainly not for devotees. Yes, means it's just a gross materialistic place. So, and Prabhupada goes on, a devotee may be tolerant regarding his own interests, but not tolerate misbehavior towards the Lord or the Lord's devotee. Yes. And Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, here the word agavan is very significant, for it indicates that the Kauravas, Dhritarashtra's sons, lost the war because of being sinful in disobeying the instructions of Krishna. Yes, so this term is, the term is aga. Aga means sinful, just like there's the famous demon killed by Krishna, Agasura. Aga means sinful. Asura, of course, means demon. So therefore, if you just translate Agasura's name into English, Agasura means sinful demon. How would it be to have a name like that? People ask you, what's your name? Well, my name's Sinful Demon. So it's like that, yeah. So in the verse, it's the last line. The sons, Sapatyam, the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, they were Krishna, means toward Krishna, Krishna Agavan, they were offenders, sinful offenders towards Krishna. And therefore, for Vidura it was intolerable, too dissatisfying to stay there. He was happy to leave. So yes, so Prabhupada, his last point here in the purport is that the use of the word agavan, offenders, very sinful people, it indicates that the Kauravas, the sons of Dhritarashtra, lost the battle of Kurukshetra because of being sinful, and particularly in terms of disobeying the instructions of Lord Krishna. So on we go, devotees, verse 3. Vidura was born from the body of Vedavyas and was not less than he. Thus he accepted the lotus feet of Lord Krishna wholeheartedly and was attached to his devotees. Yes, so, it's a bit of a long story, but Pandu could not give birth. It's a long story, actually. So Vyasadeva, his brother, was called to impregnate his wives. The first wife closed her eyes when Vyasadeva, because Vyasadeva looks very, I don't want to say ugly, but he definitely looks quite extraordinary. Dark blue type of blue-grey body. So the first queen closed her eyes. As a result, her son, Dhritarashtra, was born blind. The second wife, what did she do? Anyway, she did something also, I can't remember. But the third wife was not exactly a wife. She was a maidservant, and she was a humble person. So she was told, yes, we want Vyasadeva to impregnate you. You give birth to a child, basically, more or less, on behalf of the king, something like that. So she just went along with it. And so she gave birth to a wonderful child, was Vidura. But because she was a maidservant, he was not accepted as being like a prince. He was more or less taken to be a Sudra, born of a Sudra woman. And the second son was Pandu. The second son was Pandu, and the queen who was to be impregnated by Vyasadeva and then give birth to Pandu, she was frightened by the appearance of Vyas, because apparently he looked a little shocking. So she turned white at the time of conception, and Pandu was born white. So, okay. So, but anyway, Vidura was the son of Vyas. So he's not less qualified spiritually than Vyas. And as a result, as Prabhupada says in the purport, as Prabhupada says in the purport, and it's stated in the verse also, more or less, Vidura accepted Krishna as his worshipable Lord and followed his instructions wholeheartedly. Verse 4. Vidura was purified of all passion by wandering in sacred places, and at last he reached Haridwar, where he met the great sage who knew the science of spiritual life, and he inquired from him. Shonaka Rishi therefore asked Sutta Goswami What more did Vidura inquire from Maitreya, who is the great sage being referred to here? Right, so there's a fairly substantial purport here. In the first paragraph, Prabhupada begins by pointing out that here the words Virajas Tirtha Sevaya refer to Vidura, who is completely cleansed of all contamination by traveling to places of pilgrimage. Yes, it's really nice going to places of pilgrimage, at least if you go as a devotee. If you go as a non-devotee just wanting some material pious credits, then it's another thing altogether. But if we go to the places of the Lord in the right mood, we become very purified. So Prabhupada makes the point here further on in the purport that in India there's so many pilgrimage places, and Vidura wanted to purify himself of the effects of living in the palace, because there was so much politics and so much anti-Krishna consciousness in so many ways. And he had to live in the middle of it. And he felt contaminated from all of that. So therefore he went on pilgrimage. And Prabhupada makes the point that if you want to go on pilgrimage for purification and really get the maximum spiritual benefit, then Prabhupada says Vrindavan is the most purifying place. Even if a person's sinful, if he goes there, he'll be influenced by the atmosphere and automatically just find himself chanting the names of Krishna and Radharani. So therefore one should retire and take vanaprastha and go to those pilgrimage places for purification, means the places of Lord Krishna, not really the places of Lord Shiva or Durga, etc. Right, so Vidura, he got into this completely and eventually made his way to Haridwar, which is up sort of, it's near the foothills of the Himalayas. You got to go a little further to get into the foothills, really, into Rishikesh, and then you start seeing the Himalayas are coming up. So eventually Vidura reached Haridwar, where Maitreya was. He was sitting there. Second paragraph. And Prabhupada again about pilgrimage makes the point, important point, that you don't go there just to take bath, but you go there to meet the saintly devotees there and get instructions from them. Or if we look at it in the same point, but from a slightly different point of view, you go with the devotees. You go with the devotees, in the company of the devotees who can give you instructions about the holy places, how to relate with the holy places, and how to practice Krishna consciousness in the holy places and just in general. And then finally, to take the holy places back home with you in your heart. Otherwise, if you just go there to take bath, and this is really talking about the materialistic people who go to even like Vrindavan, just with the view, the idea of getting some material benefit. So if you go like that, Prabhupada says you're wasting your time going to places of pilgrimage. And Narottam Das Thakur has forbidden us to go to such holy places. Yeah. I mean, particularly if you don't have the right attitude, if you're not in the right company, it's not a good idea to go to the holy places. And as it happens, you may get put off. Prabhupada says a sincere person basically may get put off by the behavior of some of the present residents of the pilgrimage places. So in that sense, it would be better not to go. If you can't go with devotees and be sort of protected and guided in the holy places, then better not to go. Just stay home and chant Hare Krishna and focus your mind on Krishna. Yes. Otherwise, if you go in the right way, then it's very beneficial. Then, okay, now the third paragraph. This verse is recommending that when you go to a holy place like Vidura did, he found out a tattvavit, a person who knows the science of God. He found Maitreya, one who knows the absolute truth. And unfortunately, and Prabhupada makes the point, that at the holy places, like particularly Vrindavan nowadays, there are many, very many pseudo-transcendentalists. Yeah. So therefore you have to be intelligent enough to either find the actual person who can give you guidance in the holy place, or go with the devotee who can give you guidance like that. Then if you do like that, then your visit to the holy place will be fruitful. And ultimately, Krishna helps a sincere person not only with having the right association in the holy place, but if you're sincere, Krishna will help you finding a spiritual master. Yes, who you can dedicate your life to. Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, by the grace of a spiritual master like Maitreya, one gets the proper instruction and advances in his spiritual life. All right, so now verse 5. Shonaka inquired about the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. There must have been many narrations of the spotless pastimes of the Lord. The hearing of such narrations is exactly like bathing in the water of the Ganges, for it can free one from all sinful activities. Right, so Prabhupada comments, the water of the Ganges is pure because it comes from the lotus feet of the Lord. Comes through from outside the universe, comes through, and then from contact with the lotus feet of Lord Vamana. So similarly, Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Ganges, because it comes from the lotus mouth of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord is absolute, so there's no difference between his words, or even Prabhupada says his perspiration or his pastimes. No difference. So the water of the Ganges, the narrations of his pastimes, the words spoken by him, they're all on the absolute platform, so they're all equally good. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, if we can dovetail all our activities in relationship with Krishna, then we do not stand on the material platform, but always on the spiritual platform. Right, so on to verse 6. O Sutta Goswami, all good fortune unto you. Please narrate the activities of the Lord, which are all magnanimous and worth glorifying. What sort of devotee can be satiated by hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord? What sort of devotee can be satiated? Satiated means had enough. That's enough, thanks. But really an advanced devotee will never feel that, that's enough hearing about Krishna. Let me hear about something material. So purport is here, short purport. Prabhupada makes the point that the narration of the pastimes of the Lord, which are always transcendental, they must be received respectfully by the devotees. And if we receive them respectfully and really give our attention and don't get distracted, then, Prabhupada says, those who are actually on the transcendental platform are never satiated. They'll never tire of hearing the pastimes of the Lord. And if we're in that good consciousness, we'll feel like that too. Let's just go on. Let's just go on hearing about the Lord. And Prabhupada gives an example. If any self-realized soul reads Bhagavad Gita, he'll never feel satiated. There's a famous story of Baladev Vijayabhushan. He says, the devotees, he was living at Radhakund, the devotees asked me to write a commentary, do a translation commentary on Bhagavad Gita, but I thought, I'm at Radhakund. Bhagavad Gita is just to get people to become devotees. It's not like deep Radha Krishna Leela. But the devotees went on asking him, so he agreed. And then he said, what he says is that, so I started writing my commentary on Bhagavad Gita, and it seemed like Krishna put me on a boat and pushed me out into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita. But suddenly the boat sank, and it became a submarine, and it went down deep into the waters of Bhagavad Gita. And when I was diving deep into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita, I was finding so many jewels in the meanings, because jewels come from the ocean. I was finding so many jewels in the meanings. And now I've completed the commentary. Now I don't want to come out. That's how an advanced devotee will feel with Bhagavad Gita, with any, you could say any of Prabhupada's literatures, that it's never enough. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying that the narrations of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam can be read thousands and thousands of times, and still, without fail, new revelations, new aspects of the subject matter will be relished by the devotee. Verse 7, which is the last verse in the section. On being asked to speak by the great sages of Naimisharanya, the son of Romaharshana, Sutta Goswami, whose mind was absorbed in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, said, "Please hear what I shall now speak." There is no purport to this verse, so we go on to the next section, section 2, which is just verse 8 on its own. And we call this Sutta Prepares to Answer. So, verse 8. Sutta Goswami continued, Vidura, the descendant of Bharat, was delighted to hear the story of the Lord, who, having assumed by his own divine potency the form of a boar, I think we'll put commas there, who, having assumed, comma, by his own divine potency, comma, the form of a boar, had enacted the sport of lifting the earth from the bottom of the ocean and indifferently killing the demon Hiranyaksha. Vidura then spoke to the sage as follows. So Lord Varaha just slapped him, just a slap. No, he didn't shoot him with a machine gun, didn't cut his head off or smash him to pieces, just one slap. And that was the end of Hiranyaksha. So anyway, Prabhupada makes the point that this verse is saying that the Lord assumed the form of a boar by his own potency. His own potency. It was not the form of a conditioned soul, which is on the basis of the material potency. So a conditioned soul is forced to accept a body by material laws. But here, the Lord says, here it is said that the Lord was not forced by any external power. And so Srila Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verse 6, which confirms this. The Lord comes, Sambhavam Yatma Mayaya. He comes by his Atma Maya, his own potency. So the Lord's form is never made of material energy. Then Prabhupada gives some further elaborations on Mayavadis. It's a very important part of Krishna consciousness to understand what's wrong with impersonalism, what's wrong with Mayavad. So the Mayavadis, when they talk about the Lord, they say that Brahman has assumed the form of the Lord from Maya. It's just Maya. He's actually Brahman. He's actually pure spirit. But now he's adopted a form, and that form is just from the material energy, Maya. So, of course, we don't accept that. And Prabhupada makes the point that although Maya is superior to the conditioned souls, she's controlling the conditioned souls, and they can't just say, well, no thanks, we don't want to be controlled by you any longer. It's a whole thing. So at this point, Maya is superior to the conditioned souls, but she's not superior to the Lord. She's under his control. So the Mayavad idea that the living entity, that's you and me, the living entity is absolute truth, supreme absolute truth, but has been covered by Maya, is not accepted. We don't accept that. Because Maya is not so great that it can cover the Lord. It can't overcome the Lord. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the covering potency can be employed on the part and parcel of Brahman, that's us. We can become covered by Maya, even though we are pure spirit, Brahman. But that covering capacity cannot operate on the Supreme Brahman, on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right, so on we go, devotees, to the third section, which is from verse 9 to verse 11, And we call it Questions by Vidura. Verse 9 to verse 11. And it's just a short section, so we won't read all the verses and then come back and read them again and read the purports. We'll just read straight through right now. So Vidura said, "Since you know of matters inconceivable to us, tell me, O holy sage, what did Brahma do to create living beings after evolving the Prajapatis, the progenitors of living beings?" So Srila Prabhupada begins the purport by saying that the word avyakta marga vit is significant because it means, if you look in the word for word, you see, and it's right there in the purport, avyakta marga vit means one who knows that which is beyond our perception. See, in the word for word, it says, knower of that which we do not know. Or in other words, one who knows that which is beyond our perception. So if you want to learn things which are beyond your perception, you have to learn from a higher authority, a superior authority in the line of disciplic succession. And for example, an example is given more or less, just to know who our Father is beyond our perception. How are we going to know? Well, we can find out if we ask our mother. She can tell us. So therefore, everything beyond our perception has to be known from an authority who actually knows what's beyond our perception. So the first such authority is Brahma. And the next authority like that, who knows that which is beyond our perception, is Narada Muni. Then there's Maitreya. Maitreya also belongs to disciplic succession, same disciplic succession. So he's also avyakta marga vit. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, anyone in the bona fide line of disciplic succession is avyakta marga vit, a personality who knows that which is beyond ordinary perception. Okay, so we go on to verse 10. Vidura inquired, how did the Prajapatis, such progenitors of living entities as Marichi and Swayambhuva Manu, so how did they create according to the instruction of Brahma? And how did they evolve this manifested universe? Yes, so this is now, we're back to Vidura, inquiring from Maitreya. So there's no purport to verse 10, verse 11. Did they meaning the Prajapatis, did they evolve the creation in conjunction with their respective wives? Did they remain independent in their action? Or did they all jointly produce it? So these are important questions. And now in the next section, which is verse 12 to verse 16, section 4, Maitreya begins answering. So Maitreya said, when the equilibrium of the combination of the three modes of nature was agitated by the unseen activity of the living entity, by Mahavishnu, and by the force of time, the total material elements were produced. This is the creation, the cause of the creation. So in the purport, first paragraph, Prabhupada begins by saying that the cause of the material creation is described here lucidly. It means very clearly. The first cause is daiva, the destiny of the conditioned soul. It means the karma. Yes, that's because your destiny is your karma. It's just that's what's going to come your way. So, and Prabhupada continues that the material creation, I mean, as he said many times, it exists for us conditioned souls who want to become the false lords of this world for sense gratification. And of course, we don't know when we first desired to lord it over, but here we are in it, so we know it must have happened but before. But the Vedic literatures always say that the material creation is for the sense gratification of the conditioned soul. Anyway, there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that. And Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by bringing up another point in that regard, in regard to the purpose of the material creation. Prabhupada says, there's a nice verse which says that the sum and substance of the conditioned soul's sense enjoyment is that as soon as he forgets his primary duty to render service to the Lord, he creates an atmosphere of sense enjoyment which is called Maya. That is the cause of material creation. So Srila Prabhupada continues on with a second paragraph. And Prabhupada says that another word used here is durvitarkyena. Durvitarkyena. Well, the literal meaning, if we look at the word for word, it's in the first line. Okay. If we look at the word for word, durvitarkyena means beyond empiric speculation. So the first cause is daiva, that's our karma, the destiny of the conditioned soul. The material creation is for the conditioned souls to try to enjoy. That's at least one perspective. And Prabhupada makes the point that in the Vedic literatures, we always find that the material creation is meant for the sense enjoyment of the conditioned soul. So in the beginning of creation, the material nature, we're in the second paragraph here. In the beginning of creation, the material nature was agitated by the glance of Mahavishnu. There are three Vishnus. Prabhupada lists them out. Mahavishnu or Karanadakshay Vishnu, then Garbhadakshay Vishnu, then Shiradakshay Vishnu. First Canto has discussed them. We won't go back through them again, at least not right now. But we shouldn't think that so Vishnu is the cause of creation, but we shouldn't think that because the creation has come from Vishnu, that Vishnu has transformed into the creation. That is a mistake. He exists in his personal form always, but the material creation takes place by his inconceivable potency. So how that energy works is difficult to comprehend, but the basic idea is that the conditioned soul creates his own destiny, that's your karma, and gets a body by the Lord's laws of material nature, under the Lord's supervision, superintendence, as Paramatma, super soul. All right, so on we go to verse 13. As impelled by the destiny of the jiva, The false ego, which is of three kinds, evolved from the Mahatattva, in which the element of Rajas predominates. From the ego, in turn, involve many groups of 5 principles. So Prabhupada here in the purport says that the primordial matter or prakriti, material nature consisting of 3 modes, generates 4 groups of 5. Let's have a look at them. The first group is called elementary, the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. The second group is called tanmatra, means subtle elements or sense objects, sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Third group is 5 sense organs for acquiring knowledge. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. The fourth group is the 5 working senses, the speech, hands, feet, anus, and genitals. And Prabhupada says that some say that there's a 5th group, the 5 deities, who control these divisions. So on to verse 14. Separately unable to produce the material universe, they combined with the help of the energy of the Supreme Lord and were able to produce a shining egg. So we're going straight through here because there's not much in the way of purports. I mean, there's a couple at the beginning there, but here verse 14 doesn't have a purport. Verse 15. Let me just read verse 14 again. Separately unable to produce the material universe, they combined, these groups that we just read of from verse 13, they combined with the help of the energy of the Supreme Lord and were able to produce a shining egg. There's no purport. Verse 15, for over 1,000 years, the shiny egg lay on the waters of the causal ocean in the lifeless state. Then the Lord entered it as Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Prabhupada, well, there's a purport extremely short. Prabhupada says, from this verse it appears that all the universes are floating, or maybe were floating, or maybe are floating. It appears that all the universes are floating in the causal ocean. And on we go to verse 16, which is the last verse of this section. From the navel of the personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, sprouted a lotus flower. Yeah, we should add a comma. From the navel of the personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, sprouted a lotus flower, effulgent like 1,000 blazing suns. This lotus flower is the reservoir of all conditioned souls, and the first living entity who came out of the lotus flower was the omnipotent Brahma. So Prabhupada explains, this verse is saying, it seems, the conditioned souls who were in the body of Mahavishnu after the dissolution of the previous creation, they came out in the sum total form of the lotus. Because the verse says, this lotus flower is the reservoir of all conditioned souls. So this is called Hiranyagarbha. That's interesting. The first living entity to actually come out from the stem of the lotus flower was Brahma. who's independently able to create the rest of the manifest universe. Independently, I mean, on his own, but being empowered by Krishna. So that lotus is as effulgent as the glare of 1,000 suns. This, which indicates, Prabhupada says, that the living entities are also of the same quality, since the Lord also diffuses his bodily glare, which is the Brahmajyoti. So the description, Prabhupada goes on, the description of Vaikuntha, as stated in Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, is confirmed here. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in Vaikuntha, the spiritual sky, there's no need of sunshine, moonshine, electricity, or fire. Every planet there is self-effulgent, like the sun. Yes. Anyway, that's quite a purport of verse 16. Okay, so we'll carry on tomorrow with next section starts with verse 17. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.